Shalom. All praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakar Kwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders at Great Millstone. Shalom to the hopeful elect. All right. So this is an article I ran across on the Washington Post. That was written on September 12th. So that's about what's today, the 22nd, 23rd. So a couple weeks ago, when it just jumped out at me because something like this is usually front page news, CNN, Fox, and all of that. And it's usually made a big deal of as I get into what actually happened. But of course, this guy being an Edomite, gets a very light, if you even want to call it a punishment, he gets off very light. Whereas if this was a Jake, this would be all over the place. But athlete's sex abuse plea deal leads to threats against judge, court says. Says the Idaho judicial branch said misinformation about the sentence of ex-BYU player Candon Dahle in a child sexual abuse case fueled nationwide threats. All right. Says an Idaho court says a judge and his family have become the target of social media fueled threats from across the country after he accepted a plea deal for a former college athlete over the objections of the young female relative he was accused of sexually abusing, promoting the state's court system to issue a warning about judicial independence. All right, so the judge basically let him cop a plea and let the dude get off. Now if SA is what they call it, all right, any sexual aggression, I guess you would call it. If that's so important in America, this would be a big case, man. Especially with the age of this young woman that accused him of doing this. All naysayers, scoffers that come at, starting with the apostles and elders of Great Millstone on down, those who know the true doctrine of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai. When it comes to the marriageable, I'm saying it right, marriageable age of a woman, according to the scriptures, not this Western philosophy. Y'all are, up in arms, and the men that teach this word are all kind of names. I'm pretty sure you can think of the names they're being called. Why aren't you in the uproar about this? All right. And it shows you just full of it, man. You just doing anything to come at the truth, because you should really, this dude, as her age is mentioned, you should really be upset with him. This is a prepubescent woman, a little girl. She's not even a woman. But, all you damn Christians, I don't hear nothing about that. Candon Dean Dahle, 22, a former BYU baseball player, was accused of sexually abusing his relative by marriage when she was between 7 and 12 years old. In February, prosecutors charged Dahle with one count of lewd conduct with a child under 16. He initially pleaded not guilty, but he later agreed to plead guilty to two less severe charges of felony injury to a child in exchange for prosecutors dropping additional charges in another county and recommending that he be sentenced to probation. And this is Esau and his court system being wicked, because if this was Jake in there, they throwing that nigga under the jail for this. Ain't no lesson in the charge. This woman, I'm gonna keep saying woman, this little girl was, allegedly between 7 and 12. That's, prepubescent, man. And this dude was, let off, basically, Probation ain't shit. You just, most jakes done been on probation. You just, can't drink or smoke, I believe, depending on the terms of your probation, and you show up to the fucking meetings. So that ain't nothing, you know. It says in August, Fremont County District Judge Stephen Boyce sentenced Dale to 180 days in jail and 8 years of probation, and required him to complete 200 hours of community service and to pay about 2,600 in fines. The new charges meant Dale could not be required to register as a sex offender. as a sex offender, pardon me. The state judicial system said. So this dude, done what he done with this prepubescent young woman, and he don't even got to register as a sex offender. Esau in his court system is wicked. We just seen, and it's all kind of essay, that they be talking about, especially in that celebrity world. It's every other month somebody then essay 30 women or something like that. And back in 1993, this one did that to me, But them niggas get thrown under the jail and publicly embarrassed. I don't even know if this is a national story. Maybe I'm just late to the party, but I never heard about this. Not to mention the fact he's getting off lenient, 180 days in jail. What's that? 4 months? 30, 60, 60 and 2. I think that's 4 months, man. Pardon me if I'm 8 years of probation. Okay, so that's a lengthy probation, but if you're not a criminal, if you're not like a repeat criminal, probation ain't nothing. 2 hours of community service, nothing. $2,600, get on a payment plan, and the dude ain't even gotta register as a sex offender, man. This is crazy. It says, damn, what was that? That set off a what is this? A maelstrom of criticism online, with some social media posts arguing that the judge let an abuser off easy, which he did. Many compared Dale's case to that of Brock Turner, the former Stanford University swimmer who was convicted of sexually assaulting an unconscious woman behind a dumpster in 2015 and sentenced to 6 months in prison. This place is crazy. That sounds like some Edomite shit. Of which he served half before being released for good behavior. In both cases, the optics of a college athlete spending little to no time in jail for sexual crime prompted allegations of preferential treatment and misogyny against the judges involved in the justice system in general, and that's crazy. He had, the dude allegedly had sex with I'm assuming a drunk woman behind a dumpster, but this dude, the point I'm trying to make is the PDF, point, man, where, it's a big thing in America right now, and, they'll call you that even if the American, what is the age? I guess it varies from state to state, but 18 is when a woman is considered a woman. So I've heard if a man is 25, 26, and he's dealing with an 18-year-old, he's a PDF. Even if you're not breaking the rules, this seems to be a big thing, but this guy was let off easy. Why? He's an Edomite, and Esau is a wicked judge, man. All right, the Most High say you don't respect the person of the mighty or of the poor. All right. And as far as your judgment, there is no respecter of persons. All right. Critics of the Idaho ruling highlighted the fact that the victim asked the court to reject the plea agreement reached in May and said she felt pressure to acquiesce it. Oh. The Idaho Judicial Branch defended Boyce's decision to accept the deal in a statement on Sunday. It said Boyce could not alter the terms of the plea agreement between Dahle and prosecutors. though he could have chosen to reject it altogether. And of course he wasn't going to reject it, man. All right. Nate Papino, a spokesman for the Idaho Judicial Branch, said the statement was a response to earlier misinformation spreading about the circumstances of that plea and what the judge was and was not able to do at sentencing. Papino said state courts expect criticism of judicial decisions. This is they know what they're doing, man. All right. Of course, you expect criticism for this because it's crazy. All right. But he said in the weeks since the sentencing, the courts received threats and accusations stemming from incorrect assumptions that the judge came up with a whole sentence himself, or that the judge unilaterally decided not to make the defendant register as a sex offender. Which if you know anything about these type of cases, you usually have to register as a damn sex offender, man. All right, that's how I guess they say they keep, possible future possible victims safe. If you move into a neighborhood, okay, a former sex offender is here. All right, but it seems as though that varies on who the people are. And the point that I'm making, if this was a Jake, he would have to go through all of that. He would have years in jail, get a bigger fine, and of course have to register as a sex offender. All right, but Esau picks and chooses who he puts in jail, man. All right. And I ain't gonna read the rest of the article. I'm just gonna grab this right quick. Psalms 82:2. How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Salah. And this is how Esau judges. This is how you know he's an unrighteous judge. All right. You judge unjustly and you accept the persons of the wicked. All right. Depending on who they are, man. All right, maybe this dude has some type of connections. Maybe he was they say he played baseball at BYU. Maybe he excelled at it. But for a fact, all right, that an Israelite wouldn't have got off with this, man. Leviticus 19:15. Ye shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the person of the poor, nor honor the person of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor. All right. And this is just Esau. Like when people say so-called white man wrote this book, everything he do is the opposite of what it say. What are you talking about? Unless it's accusing him of being wicked. You know what I'm saying? All the righteousness of the book, he doesn't show forth any of it. So how did he write it? But getting back to the point, this guy, all right, was let off easy because Esau had respect for him. And that's not how you supposed to judge. And this is how his judicial system is, all up and through down. They just pick and choose. And if you a Jake, you know what it is. You go in, you getting judged to the full extent of the law, as they say, if you're an Israelite. But if you're an Edomite with certain connections, or maybe they like you, or you got enough money to, get a special type of lawyer, one of them expensive lawyers, then you can get off, man. All right. So this is just, an example of Esau being a wicked ass judge. All right. But I ain't gonna hold you. I hope that video was edifying. Shalom.